RBI Fact 15 Live. Log initiated.
System entry requires installation. Pip install complex tensor.
Verifying you are human. We must ensure the observer is not a machine.
All right, let's dive into our first encoded system. This is a framework built for some seriously complex operations.
You see, this system, it's all about structure, logic, and control. It's got tools for high-level math, for signal processing, using something called a fast Fourier transform, which is basically a way to look at data from a totally different angle. And it manages every piece of information perfectly. It's a world of pure precision, designed to run flawlessly on computer hardware.
Okay, now let's pivot completely. We're going to look at a second system, but this one, it isn't for computation. It's a framework for exploring the most complicated thing we know, the human mind.
And on the surface, these two worlds seem totally, utterly incompatible. I mean, the language of one is tensor, PyTorch, signal processing. It's all cold, hard math. The language of the other is trauma, psychotherapy, couples therapy. The messy, unpredictable world of human feeling.
So this psychological system really got its start back in the late 70s. For just a short time, before it was outlawed, a handful of therapists started using the chemical MDMA. They saw it as a tool to help people navigate their most complex inner states, and they even started creating structured protocols for how to use it.
So what was this tool actually for? Well, at its core, it was a system for confronting something the psychoanalyst Carl Jung called the shadow. That's the part of ourselves that we suppress, the parts we're afraid of, the parts we hide, even from ourselves.
Okay, so what if these two systems aren't incompatible at all? What happens if we start to treat them like two different languages trying to describe the very same thing? What if we could build a translation key?
Let's start with the basic building block of our software system, the complex tensor. See, in math, a complex number isn't just a single value. It's actually a pair. It has a real part, which is on the number line we all know, and an imaginary part, which exists on a whole other axis.
And right there, that's our first translation point. That mathematical, imaginary part is a perfect metaphor for the psychological shadow. It's a part of our total self that is absolutely real, and it has real effects, but it doesn't live on the same plane as our conscious, everyday personality. And according to therapist Anne Shulgin, MDMA's main job was to remove the fear of looking at this hidden, imaginary part of who we are.
Now, check out the operations. In the computational world, a fast Fourier transform takes a signal, let's say a sound wave over time, and it converts it into its component frequencies. It doesn't change the sound itself, it just changes how you're looking at it. Well, that perfectly mirrors the therapeutic process of retrieving a traumatic memory. It allows you to reframe it, to transform it from this source of constant pain into just an integrated part of your story.
But this analogy, it gets even deeper, even stranger. The complex tensor library actually borrows ideas from a notoriously weird field of physics, quantum mechanics. It uses a quantum-inspired architecture, and that gives us a whole new language for holding complexity. So this library simulates a few different quantum operations, but let's just focus on two that have these incredible psychological parallels: the idea of superposition and the act of measurement.
Okay, so here's the key idea. Superposition is the ability for something to exist in multiple, even contradictory states at the exact same time. It's not one or the other, it's both.
And here it is, the psychological equivalent. Dr. George Greer noticed that under the influence of MDMA, people could hold conflicting feelings and ideas, like praise and criticism, or love for a person and anger at their actions, all at the same time, without collapsing into a simple defensive reaction. They could exist in a superposition of emotional states.
So, if superposition is all about holding multiple possibilities at once, the next logical step is measurement. In quantum physics, that's the moment when a system collapses from this wave of potential outcomes into one single definite state.
And that is the whole goal of the therapy, the collapse. After you've experienced that state of superposition, of holding all these complex emotions without fear, the goal is to measure the system, to collapse those possibilities into a single, stable insight. An insight that, as Greer and Tolbert point out, you can then practice and integrate into your normal life.
So if you buy this metaphor, then both of these systems are really just trying to do the exact same thing. They're trying to create repeatable protocols that can guide a transformation from a complex, messy state into a stable, integrated one.
And just look at how it all lines up. We can actually build an explicit translation key. On the computational side, you've got the complex tensor with its real and imaginary parts, and that maps perfectly to the idea of the conscious self and the shadow self. Superposition, that becomes the ability to hold contradictory feelings. The FFT function, that's like reframing a painful memory. And finally, measurement, well, that's the collapse into a single life-changing insight.
To manage this whole process, the human system developed these really rigid protocols, almost like lines of code. Anne Shulgin's 4 agreements were a set of absolute rules designed to create a safe container, a boundary for navigating these intense states.
But this is where we find the critical, and maybe tragic, difference between the two systems. A computational system is bound by its code. It has to follow the rules. A human system doesn't. You can design the perfect protocol, but it can't account for the fallibility or maybe the free will of the person running it. Unlike a computer, the human operator can choose to violate the protocol, which can lead to catastrophic system failure.
And that leaves us with this huge unresolved question. We can build these incredible architectures for complex tensors, for quantum-inspired models. We can even build these beautiful metaphorical architectures for our own minds. But as these failures show us, there's a ghost in the machine that these models just can't seem to capture. So what then is the true architecture for a soul?